we can call the meeting to order. We have two presenters today through our hybrid meeting. First is Christine Medore from the Massachusetts Housing Partnership Fund. So I'm going to suggest, since Christine looks like she's available now, that we move the welcome to our new member, Barb Cullen, and public comment to after we have our presentations. So all the I'm thinking about roll call, maybe going around the table and saying who's here. I'm Madeline Nash, Chair of the Housing Trust.
Bruce Shapiro.
Karen Wiener.
Elaine Nickerson.
Korea. 84, Director of Planning and Development.
Caitlin Sullivan, Planning Office.
Great, thank you. So without further ado, Christine, thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about condo conversion ordinance in Salem, as well as how it might apply to Newburyport. I think you put together some slides that we've shared with Caitlin and Andy, and the trust members have had a chance to look at them today. But we really look forward to hearing your insights into the housing situation in Newburyport as it applies to condo conversion. So welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I can't see the room, so good to quote unquote see you all again and hear you. So I can see the slides being shared. I guess I'll ask. Hi.
Yeah, is there
There you
any
are.
way to make it so that Christine can?
Caitlin's control.
Yeah,
That's okay.
Okay.
People are
Yeah.
talking, it'll zoom around.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is
Yeah,
that Caitlin?
Yeah, hi.
Hi. Okay. So Caitlin, I'll just let you know when I need to move on to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, so this should be pretty brief, and I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions, whether from the members of the board or the public. So a little bit of context setting here. I think Newburyport has been observing Salem's activities around condo conversion, and most recently, about a couple of months ago, the city of Salem was able to adopt a local condo conversion that's more robust than what the state law empowers cities and towns to do. So because I was part of that process over, I believe, 4 years in terms of data analysis, also myself being on the city's Affordable Housing Trust board, and then ultimately providing additional assistance through my role at MHP. Members of the council, your Newburyport City Council, and also Andy and Caitlin had reached out to me further to see if I could provide similar assistance just to help you guide in some decision making, whether you want to follow the path that Salem follows. So tonight I'm going to present some summary baseline data to help you think about what the next steps should be for Newburyport. I will just kind of preempt this by saying this is just baseline data, and I don't think there is any kind of capacity out there in terms of my time at MHP or perhaps another regional planning agency. I forget if you're in MAPC or MVPC. Is it MAPC? MVPC. I'm not. Okay, I'm not sure. Merrimack Valley, yes. So I'm not sure if the RPA has capacity to assist you in any additional work that you're seeking to explore this further. But I did discuss this with Andy and Caitlin that my level of involvement in Salem is probably not going to be replicated in Newburyport because it just involves a lot of time that at the moment I won't be able to commit to. But I think tonight will be really enlightening for the board and help you think about next steps. Okay, I'm gonna pause there and see if there's any questions before I dive in. All right,
I think
so
we're
that being
good.
said, great. Let's go to the next slide. So just to provide some context in terms of what condo conversion could fit into your overall housing conversation, I want to make sure you're understanding the state of your housing stock and your demographic profile. So I pulled together the most recent set of census data, and this is from the American Community Survey. So that is collected and summarized every year. But people who work in housing data, we like to use the 5-year data set, which is a larger data set. The population is a bit more accurate. And you can see that the tenure mix in Newburyport between owners and renters is much, so the renter proportion is much lower than the state. And just to compare that to Salem, we're at 50 and 50-50. So that means that you have fewer renters overall in all of your households in Newburyport. That also can be translated to the fact that you have very low rental inventory. And when there is rental demand, there's not a lot of inventory to meet that demand. So when you look at demographics, you'll see that owners, in terms of income, are much higher than renter households. They are also less cost burdened, and cost burden means that you are paying more than 30% of your income on housing costs. So renters are much more cost burdened compared to owners. Renters are also more identified as non-white. So any kind of displacement or housing instability as a result would be disproportionately impacted for renters. And also just to kind of go back to the cost burden data point, because renter households have higher cost burden and much lower household income, they are more at risk of displacement. So when they get displaced, it's very difficult for them to kind of recover from that disruption. Okay, next slide, please. So when I started to look at the data in Newburyport, and just to maybe help you, maybe have you geek out with me a little bit, the way that I put together the data is that I look at all the assessors data that's available to me. And I think I was very ambitious and asked Caitlin for 10 years set of assessors data, but I think we were able to find 8 years, so back to 2017. But it's really good to have this data set that covers the pandemic period, because you can see some of the trends that happened in Salem that really compelled the city to move forward the condo conversion. The pandemic data was very, very compelling. And you'll see that it's quite different in Newburyport. So I wanted to just see if there's any change in land use across the city. So what I mean by change in land use is the parcel with the use code that is in the assessor's data. So every single parcel is classified by a land use code. And in this table, I only pulled out the ones that are relevant to residential uses. So over this 8-year period, you can see that for single family parcels, there's an increase of 2.9%. And comparatively to Salem, the net increase of units is not as significant as a place like Salem, where we have a lot more parcels. So the net increase here is around 30, 20, between 20 and 30. Wait, oh wait, so sorry. I can't do the math right now, but anyways, it's 2.9%. So you'll see across the board, condos has experienced the largest increase at just over 11%. And then the miscellaneous residential, the 109 use code, those are parcels where there's multiple buildings on the parcel. Sometimes it's kind of two buildings that have residential use, or one building is residential, the other is either commercial or just accessory building. But for tax purposes, they coded under the 109. So anything that begins with a 1 is a primarily residential use. 105s and 104s are 104s and 105s are 2 and 3 family buildings. So you'll see that the 109, 104, and 105, all three use codes, these parcels have seen a slight decrease. And this is where I think we will be focusing a lot of our attention on the conversions, because these are the parcels that tend to kind of convert to something else. And the something else is, for our purposes, is condos. And if you look at just the net increase or net decrease of parcels, it's also not a huge change. So for example, 3 family, it's between 52 and 50. So that means 2 parcels have changed from the number of 3 family parcels have decreased by 2, but still the percentage is 3.8. Apartments are any parcels coded at 111 to 125, and vacant accessory land is 130 to 132. I think this is also an important data point to look at, because you want to know if some of this kind of vacant developable accessory land is being converted into something else that indicates some kind of growth in your infill parcels. You might see that in the data that I would present tonight. So some of this could have been converted to residential, but it's also not very significant. So the decrease, the negative 7.1%, actually shows that you're seeing some growth in your in the city in terms of the using vacant land. Okay,
Can I ask a question?
yeah, go ahead.
Christine, hi, it's Karen. Thanks for
Hi,
coming.
Karen.
The apartment line, what does that mean exactly? Like, what do those numbers mean? 88 parcels that have apartments on them? It's not the
Yes.
number of
Not the
Yes.
unit.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yes, so 88 parcels, 90 parcels. So apartments for code number 111, I believe that's 4 units or up. And then the 125 is 8 units and up. So even if it's a one parcel, it could be a building with 4 units or 6 or 8 units. So between 6 and 8 units.
I was just gonna interject that if we use this data for, going forward, it's gonna be useful in different contexts, where we could add a little bit clarification, like a footnote or clarification in the table, for instance, just so that people don't, understand right off the bat, we're not referring to units, we're referring to.
Yeah,
properties
and
involved.
it'd be
Yeah.
nice, I don't know if we can do units, but like, for instance, if one of the Minco buildings opened and suddenly there's, 80 more
Right,
apartments, that's not really reflected except as maybe an additional parcel? Is that
correct,
Yeah,
in here, yeah.
yeah, on here.
So under the apartments, you see it go from 88 in 2017 to 90 in 2024. So that means that we have more parcels used.
Parcels.
But we don't
Yes.
have units, right?
Yeah, so I can talk about that as we go on a little more. I know this can be like parcels versus buildings versus units. They all mean different things. So it's important that I point out, Karen, as you said, this data is just for parcels. The limitation is just that the way I can find this data and analyze it is only through the assessor's database. And because they code it by parcel, I can only talk about it at a parcel level, but you'll see later on, I guess the next slide. We
And I
can
have
get
a
into
question
more.
on this.
Yes,
I have another question on this chart too. In, I don't know if it's unique to Newburyport or if Salem has it as well, but the 2 family structure, often has two homeowner units or two condo units, like they're not necessarily condos, they're sometimes two separately owned units, but they're attached, like a duplex in other towns.
Mhm.
But, or they're two condo units and there are documents that define them as that. I wonder if those are distinguished in this in any way.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, so for a
This is-
two-family parcel, a parcel that's coded as a 104 two-family, they
Uh-huh.
are not condos because on the assessor's data, it is under one parcel ID.
Okay.
If there is a parcel that has a two-family building that are condos, that parcel ID will be split to have the specific unit ID associated. So what happens in for a parcel that has, for example, a two condo, you could see that in the deed where there is a master deed associated with a complete parcel and building. And
Yeah.
then there's it's like a common code that starts with a 9. So when you see that, you know that the two building that has that split parcel ID is actually two condos and not a building with two apartments. So it is
Okay.
definitely distinguished here.
Okay, great.
Any more questions before I move forward?
Sorry, I need to clarify that a little bit more. So the 2 families and 3 families parcels all contain rental, or it could be ownership and rental? Like, could someone be
They are,
live in one unit and they're renting out the other?
yeah, so unfortunately, I cannot
Can't
give
distinguish
you
that.
the
Yeah.
exact data
Yeah.
because this is based on the assessors, the tax code. So if they're classifying as a 102, whether
Mhm.
it's the building has a 2-family, 3-family apartment, if it's 2 condos, 3 condos, or 6 apartments, you can see that in the assessor's data. But I can't tell you if those condos are being rented out or not because there's just no way to validate that information.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful to know.
Anything else? Okay, next slide, please. I'm getting a little chilly. Bring on my sweater. Okay, so this chart, I hope is a little surprising to you. This is the number of new condos by year. And the way that I'm able to collect this is, for example, in 2018, I will compare the 2018 list of the assessor's data in terms of a 102. Any condo is coded as 102 and compare those condos to their former use code. And if that 102 condo does not have a former use code, it tells me it's a new condominium unit. Does that make sense? Okay. So you'll see that kind of new condo units kind of peaked at 2021. And this peak is much more drastic in Salem because during the pandemic, a lot of people were looking to move to places where they can work from home, or there are additional pressures to buy new homes, especially for smaller starter homes. They're often found in condos rather than single family. And it's just kind of the nature of our housing market, very competitive housing market these days, where the kind of first home buyer opportunities tend to be in condos. And because the interest rates were still very low, people are buying less, they have a lot more disposable income or are able to save more because they're commuting less, all sorts of factors. And of course, I'm not saying that this is any way causality, but these trends are, I can see there are parallels between this spike and the spike in Salem, because in 2021, the number of new condos that appeared in Salem was just through the roof. And it hasn't calmed down since. It just kept increasing. But unlike Salem and Newburyport, it cooled immediately. In fact, in 2024, there were no new condo units. And the new condo units so far in 2025, the 4 units that you see here are actually from one parcel, and that was from a former commercial building. So it wasn't even a rental apartment converted to a condo building. Let's see. So in total, since 2017, and this is an estimated number, 175 rental units have been converted into condos. And when I say estimated, because the number of units, the old units that got converted, I can't really verify that information because even if an apartment, for example, the previous code that says 111, that's kind of a four unit apartment. Sometimes when you go and look at the Google Street View, it doesn't look like 4 apartments, it look like it could be more. So I'm just going by the use code. If it says it's a 2-family, I would just put in 2. So when I say 2 rental units were converted, I'm just going by the use code. And as Caitlin and Andy knows, when I try to collect information, I actually went on Google Street View for every single one of these addresses to look at the building to make sure it's a real building, that there are mailboxes on the building. I try to look at the utility box, but I can't always see that from the street view. So these are all real addresses that have been converted. So if it's really obvious that a 2-family, even it's coded as a 104, isn't a 2-family, then I would just kind of make my judgment that it's not a 2-family. But I don't think there were any scenarios where that was the case. So I just want to point out that more than half of the city's housing stock were built before 1950. So you have a relatively older housing stock that people tend to want to renovate older homes, and as a result, they are more at risk of conversions, the rental units being converted to condos. So this table, we're talking specifically about units because I can see that a parcel ID was split into multiple IDs when it converted into condos. Any
So
questions?
this question may be more for the planning office, but do we know in any of these circumstances if there was like a large building with 20 units or something converted, or whether these were sort of small
We're really
conversions?
talking all small,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
Can't think of
Could
any.
go
I
on.
can tell you just if you give me a moment. I'm looking at my tables.
Except for 25, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was one, this is one of those parcels that had multiple buildings, Merrimack Street. It was coded as a 109. It had, based on the street view, had 2 units, and they were able to use that as an infill opportunity and created 10 units. So that's kind of the scenario that you might be referring to, Karen. But no, I don't think I saw anything where it was a small building that created a higher number of units.
And do we know that these are all conversions, or could they also be new buildings?
So I did not include any new buildings.
Okay.
Anything that was either vacant and then created new condo buildings, I didn't include those. I should have said that earlier. So those
Okay.
weren't conversions of rental units. They were just straightforward new units, new
Okay.
condo units. But there were a lot of them. As I was going through the list, there were a lot of them. That's why in the beginning, when I said you are seeing some residential growth in your vacant and accessory land, that's where that's happening. There are some really nice projects that I saw, in fact, that look really nice.
Well, and what do you mean by really nice? I'm just curious.
Really nice. Oh my gosh, did I was just kind of dig myself a grave. Um,
Part of the hillside project that came up, I think, was one of them, as I recall.
so there were ones that are just really nicely designed. I was actually surprised to see them just very nicely designed, and the scale fits really nicely in the neighborhood context. They're definitely not kind of mid-high rise buildings in any way. It was, I think my gut reaction when I saw them on the street views, I was like, oh, I want to live there. So I guess that's what I meant by really nice. All right, should I move on? Next slide. Okay, so this is where I think will help your next steps is when I put together this table for Salem, it was pretty jarring to me that the majority of conversions were happening in the 2 and 3 family buildings. You do have a lot of that happening here, but it's not as drastic or just very kind of uh shocking. It's not as shocking as Salem. There are lots of 2 and 3 families being converted here, and it makes up most of your conversions. But going back to that earlier table, you see that the number of buildings in 2 and 3 family buildings that are being converted into condos, the net increase isn't as many as you would think. And again, the trend is going down. As you can see, the 2024, I think that the year I should have done the move back 1 year, move back 1 year. So in 2025, you can only, the only conversion happened in a formerly retail or commercial parcel. So it's actually cooling off. Um, and so the number of total buildings that were converted into condos during this period is just about 69 buildings. And the estimated new condo units are 192. So yes, there are more condo units being created compared to the number of units that we think might be rental. So there are more housing units in terms of condos being created as a result of conversions. And then there was a question about the state law, whether it could cover owner-occupied buildings. So one of the kind of sticking points when Salem was going through this process was that they needed to file a home rule petition because the state law at the time only applied the law to buildings that are have properties that have 4 units or less. And because of this table, we saw that the majority of conversion activities, it was happening in 2 and 3 family buildings. And we know that there are so many of them in Salem that are providing the naturally occurring affordable housing, so the below market rate rental stock. Those are mostly in the 2 and 3 family buildings. So we decided we needed to file a home rule petition and lower that threshold to under 4 units. And then the question about whether that home rule petition, whether the local law should also cover owner occupied units, that was kind of created a bit of contention in the community because we're hearing a lot of owners that people who actually live in the 2 and 3 family buildings and then rent out the other units to people who need them. And then when they want to sell, they get converted into condos, but they still end up living in the condos, may or may not end up living in the condos. In the end, the home rule petition in Salem did cover the owner occupied units, but the state law did change through the Affordable Homes Act to lower that threshold for anything that's above 1 unit. So anything that is not a single family will be covered under the state condo conversion law, except for owner occupied buildings. So when I was combing through this data, I did note, and this is just my speculation, there's really no way to verify this information. I did take a look at the owner name to see if the former parcel ID and the new parcel ID, whether the name existed for both. So for the condo, there's several new units, and I'll just see if the owner of the former use is also in one of the new condo units. And if that was the case, I noted it for each of these parcels. So overall, it's about 20% of these conversions that may still have the owners living in them. So I would say that it's not such a huge impact if you decide you don't want to use a local ordinance to cover owner occupied buildings. So I think the state law would be enough for you to move forward with any kind of exercising your condo conversion powers at the local level. Does that make sense?
I'm looking at this slide. It looks to me like the majority of the conversions had to do with two-family properties, the red. Is that correct? 104.
Yes. Yes.
And that's similar to what you have seen in Salem.
Yes. But the number of buildings are very different. I can actually,
We have fewer buildings
Yeah.
in Newburyport. I'm sort of wondering about the rate. You're saying that the rate is still much smaller or less in Newburyport.
comparatively, it is lower. I'll pull up the exact numbers for you in a second, but I don't want to dismiss that this is still a loss of naturally occurring affordable housing, because Newburyport has such a low rental stock. Is the impact that you're seeing here could be proportionate to Salem, even though the numbers are very different. Let me just look. Should have pulled this up earlier. Don't have it. Let's see. I have to do some quick math. 1 second. $60 and so in a similar period, the number of two-family buildings in Salem that were converted into condos were 60 buildings. In Newburyport, that number is 6. But the number of 1 second. The number of two-family buildings at the start of that period was 1,577, whereas in Newburyport, that number is 277. So comparatively, Salem lost about 3.8%, but that's 60 buildings, and then Newburyport lost 2.2%, and that's 6 buildings. So in Salem, the period that I'm talking about is between 2016 and 2021. So a much narrower period, and this is just after the pandemic. So the data, there's an updated set of data that I don't have it in front of me immediately, but I know since then it has only increased.
Mm.
So again, you have a very low inventory for rental housing. This could mean it could be a different conversation in Newburyport that you're seeing a lot of two families being converted into condos, right? But the state law allows you to enforce whatever the state law empowers you to do. And I think that's my next final slide. I don't think there's any more slides after. Caitlin, if you can go to the final slide. So I will just say, just based on my experience in Salem, the critical factor in moving forward with a local, more robust condo conversion ordinance is if you want to do that, you need to make sure you have full-time staff dedicated, or not staff full-time dedicated just condo conversion, but you have someone who does housing full-time that can take this on to not just enforce your local ordinance, but also participate in amending any kind of local ordinance or creating it or adopting it, creating a program to help homeowners be part of this. There's a whole application system and a review process and also enforcement that goes with a local ordinance. And even if you want to start to enforce the state law, you do need to dedicate staff time. Another path is that you can just enforce the state law. With Salem, they wanted to extend, I think, the notice period so that the tenant could have more time in terms of finding a new place to live. The local ordinance also increased the relocation fee. There's a little bit more protection for people under protected classes. And I think there's a few more things, but it just boosted the tenant rights that weren't as strong as the state law. But I have to really emphasize that a condo conversion ordinance does not stop conversions. It just puts homeowners and renters at a closer to a level playing field so that the homeowners, if they do want to convert, they do need to follow a process that ensures the tenant has the ability to understand their rights as a tenant and find reasonable accommodation in terms of relocation and where they could go. And also that they're not evicted during the notice period. I think that was one more thing that they added in terms of a local ordinance, that they cannot be evicted during the notice period, whereas the state law that was not provided. So it does, we really modeled the Somerville ordinance, and Somerville has had years of data since their adoption, and they were very much supportive of an ordinance, looking back, that their goal was to slow down the conversions, and their ordinance did just that. So it does not stop conversions. It just moves it at a pace where renters can catch up and find another place to go. And there was a question, I think Andy pointed this out, that there is a loophole where owners could sell, convert it into condos, and rent those condos out, right? So what happens when they take advantage of that loophole? And for Salem, there is a cooling off period after a rental unit is converted. I believe it's like 1 year, a cooling off period somehow. So I can't remember the specifics because towards the adoption, I didn't really get too much into the weeds around the ordinance language. But there is a cool off period where you cannot, I don't think you can rent it out after it gets converted. And then I will also add that if you decide to not move forward with amending your local ordinance or just completely introduce a new ordinance that's very different from the one you have now, if you just want to kind of take the time and monitor the activity, commercial activity for the next few years, I would encourage you to also look at other trends that includes eviction and foreclosure filings. They tend to be an indicator of conversions as well in very competitive markets. So in Newburyport, the data, it shows that there's comparative to your region, you have a low rate of eviction and foreclosure filings, but that data is not insignificant. So it's just something to keep an eye on. Who knows what's going to happen in the next few years, right? That's all I have. If you have, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Christine, it's Andrew. How you doing?
Hey, how are you? I'm good.
Good. Thanks for coming in. Question for you. So the need to seek a home rule petition from the state, what's the trigger for that? Like, what would, if we wanted to do, like, what requires that? If we just make some certain, changes to our ordinance to be stricter than the state's standards, that doesn't require, not all of those standards require seeking a home rule status,
Yeah.
do they?
No, so we had to file a home rule petition because the change that we were seeking was the applicability. So the law only applied to properties with 4 units or above. That was the applicability. So we can't lower that in any way because the law just does not, it basically does not apply where we really need it to apply. But in terms of regulation and I think the law states it pretty clearly. There's a specific section where the state law says municipalities can adopt a local ordinance to increase, decrease some of these different thresholds. But the applicability is one where we cannot just adopt a local ordinance and say we want to apply to everything that's not a single family.
Okay, and did you say that changed with the Affordable Homes
Yes.
Act? Okay.
Yes. So yeah. So the state law now applies to anything that is not a single family, except for owner occupied. So owner occupied buildings are not covered in the state law.
So if we wanted to cover owner occupied, which Salem did, then we would need to seek a home rule petition for that?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And I mean, let's just say hypothetically, I had a draft ordinance sitting in front of me, or all the text of the revisions we wanted to make to our ordinance, and it included covering owner occupied units. Therefore, we needed to go and get a home rule petition from the state. How long would that take? Like from today till, would that take like 6 months? Would that take a year? Would that take
6 years.
You are bringing up bad memories here, Andrew.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to, to open up wounds here. And I'm not holding you to it. I know it's not a sign.
So, yeah, so I guess it's a luck of the draw. So, a home rule petition is voted on by the legislature. The legislative cycle is 2 years. When we first filed it in 2020, there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on. We didn't really have a local champion. You would think Kim Driscoll would be a champion, but I think there were a lot of other priorities during that time. And we weren't really focused on lobbying our state rep and senator to make sure it goes through the legislature. So it ended up not getting voted on at the end of the cycle. So the Housing Trust and the City Council were very frustrated that it just died. And then we had a mayor that decided to run for lieutenant governor. So that meant we had an interim mayor and then eventually a new mayor. And then at the same time, we also got a new state rep. Our former state rep ran for DA. So we had a lot of transitions, and this required people like me, the planning staff, to kept reminding the city council and whoever is in the mayor's office to say, look, this failed the last time. It was kind of embarrassing that nobody was able to bring it to the floor for a vote. Let's make sure this doesn't fall through the cracks again. Our new state rep and Senator Lovely were very good at making sure this gets done. So in total, it took 4 years. But then during that time, the Affordable Homes Act was adopted. So it was like, did we just waste our time? But we didn't really waste our time because the home rule petition did give us that that coverage for owner occupied buildings. That was the main difference.
That's just helpful that is just helpful for like expectation setting, because I mean, if we did wanna be, you know, move something forward, people need to hear, you know, it's not, especially if we wanna do something like that. And we're going, and it's gonna, any action that requires, intervention from the legislature, it's not gonna be some like, you know, easy thing, it's a challenging process, so I appreciate the perspective on that. And thank you
And-
again for the presentation.
I really, yeah, you're welcome. And I really think the make or break factor here is staff time. That was the state law does not tell you how to roll out a condo conversion application program or review process. I mean, it kind of talks about it. It says you need to have a condo review board, but it doesn't tell you who should be on the board and how they should do it. It really requires staff to dedicate attention to this. Even now, if you want to enforce a state law, you need someone to go to the registry and see who has filed a master deed in the last whatever period, 3 months, and then you follow up on those new owners and see, hey, did you follow the state law condo conversion? Did you do everything? Did you give your tenants a year notice? Like by then it's too late. It might not be too late, but the state law is just not very, it doesn't really help. And so in terms of tenants' rights. And so when I was doing the research for Salem, I did talk to a fair number of communities that have adopted a local version. And out of all the ones that did, they, I think only Cambridge and Somerville were the two that said, we adopted it, we put staff to run this program, and that's why our ordinance works. Everybody else who adopted a local ordinance didn't dedicate staff, and it basically was just an ordinance on paper. Nothing was really done afterwards.
Is it fair to
And
say,
yeah,
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, just based on what you're saying, is it fair to say then that, even, you could have the ordinance, and even if you do dedicate staff and there's enforcement going on, things can still slip through the cracks, right?
yeah, things can slip through the cracks, but I think I want to go back to the purpose of a local ordinance is that you want to make sure the tenants know what rights they have when they
Yeah.
get notified that their building is being converted. The state law doesn't tell you who is going to tell the tenant. They just said that you have to give the tenant notice. You have to provide it in something that they can understand in their own language. But nobody is doing that. I believe Newburyport has your local ordinance. I don't think it's very much different from the state law. And so maybe it's worth just taking a review of what's been done to enforce it since its adoption and see if there's any any areas where you can dedicate some staff time to see if you can boost that enforcement. I think the key thing is to make sure that the tenant knows that they have a right to a relocation fee, which the state law is at just hundreds of dollars. It doesn't cover first last deposit. That they in the Salem, we put in a first right of refusal. We even put in this, I think the city has the second right of refusal, and that is a really powerful tool to continue as a trust if you want to find a way to take on some property and turn that into affordable housing. That could be one avenue you can consider. So there are lots of other ways that you can get creative by adopting a local ordinance. But I keep going back to this idea of the purpose of a local ordinance is the tenants don't know what rights they have. They rely on someone to tell them you you are entitled to a relocation fee, you're entitled to a notice period, and if you are disabled or of a certain age, you are entitled to even more. So the fact that nobody is telling them that now is an area that you might want to consider looking into.
Thank you.
If I could just chime in, having looked at the spectrum of these pieces here and the discussion, I would echo something that Andrew had noted earlier, which is that if we want to do something beyond what the statute already provides for, that we need special permission, to do that, that could take a while to do. And it's one of the reasons why I was trying to point out in the discussions here, and as this might circle back with the planning development committee, whether this gets rolled to the next session based on timing or whatnot. That it's very important for us to also have the policy level discussion. What, if anything, do we want to do differently than, if the desire is to do what's, Salem's doing? We had, I think, in some ways, sort of a knee-jerk reaction, from folks saying, let's do exactly what they're doing without necessarily walking through the particulars and understanding this, the analysis piece, how the tool actually works and so forth. And one of the things that concerns me, and I think to the discussion that you just had, with Christine is, even the special act for Salem doesn't actually require the registry of deeds to stop someone who comes in to record the document. So you're effectively putting a backstop on the books on paper, which is good to have there. But you're effectively, the way this actually gets done is actually proactively by having staff who are constantly communicating with the property owner, the folks who are renting, the property owners who might be involved, real estate folks, like trying to have that constant awareness so that you're not cleaning up a mess after the fact and you're not arguing with attorneys as to whether or not they complied with something. This does actually take a lot of time to administer. And so while it sounds great on the books as a concept, and it is a tool I'd love to be able to use, it does concern me that it's a very clumsy sort of, inefficient tool to use the way that it's actually set up. And I'm not speaking specifically to the state statutory piece or the Salem piece, something, sort of in general. Because if you actually examine the particulars of it, once you get past, the need for it, there's a need, you go into the mechanics of it, the mechanics aren't the greatest because there isn't it's not as if the registry was instructed by the special act to say, in the case of Salem, we're not recording any condo docs until we hear back from them. That is not how it works. So to the earlier point, it doesn't help very much if you're just cleaning up the record after the fact. You're spending a lot of legal fees chasing something. You're trying to make sure that folks are getting compensated essentially after the fact. There's just, that is not the best way to, have it. So in this case, to Christine's earlier point, it is very important to recognize that if we're going to do something like this, and as we balloon our ordinances as a city, we have to have the staff to administer those things properly. Otherwise, they don't effectively get done, efficiently, the way we're trying to get them done. So I do think the staffing side is as important as anything that is put on the books, regardless of what we decide to do for special legislation or the ordinance.
Yeah, it strikes me as something that needs to be done at the local level, that you can't sort of farm it out to some regional entity or something.
I think we could rely upon like, VPC or something. I think we could work with others for sort of the staffing side of it to some degree. But I think to me that comes, that relates to more to distributing the cost, the administrative burden and cost of running, a program like that. Is there a single person who's working on this area for several communities at once? That might be more realistic to work into a municipal budget in either Newburyport or anywhere. But the idea of having a whole new position created, like Salem,
Yeah.
I don't see that being as easy to accomplish here. So I think in reality, that's what I think, if we're talking about something regional, whether it's MVPC or something else, we're actually probably talking about distributing the administrative burden and making it as efficient as possible, with that sort of setup. We're not Cambridge, we're not Somerville or Boston, so.
But there could be some education to tenants,
Yes.
a periodic education to tenants. To let them know what their rights are. I mean, that doesn't seem too burdensome.
And I think we should do that in any event, no matter what, and irrespective of whether it's the current provisions or we're improving or adapting or going further with them. We should continue to do that. I think we've talked in the office, we talked with the trust, we talked a little bit with the council on this as it circles back there. I think, for our office, we should continue to try to do that on a periodic basis, but it's just that the resources do the full blown, especially if we're going further with it, we may need more bandwidth than is available to do that, because sometimes you get into arguments with people who are, they want to dispute whether or not they can comply with something, and it's the LLCs and the transition from one property owner to the other, well, we're not the ones who are responsible, all that kind of stuff. That does take time. So we need to recognize that as well.
Any other questions or comments for Christine?
Yeah, one last thing. First of all, Christine, thank you so much for all this information and all the research that you did. It was really fabulous and really tedious and involved. Appreciate it. It seems if I could try to summarize what I'm getting out of all this and tell me how accurate this is, that basically, first of all, having a local ordinance doesn't stop the condo conversions, just to be clear about that. It can help slow them down. It can certainly help with the tenants' rights, getting them more time and that sort of thing, but it doesn't stop them, number one. Number two, to actually enforce even what we have now, just the state law, without even going through a whole, home rule process, all that, would require a kind of staffing that we probably are not going to have. We certainly don't right now. It's unlikely, I would imagine, that the city's gonna put that into the budget. So not having someone to do anything, it sounds like the most we can do at this point is it is helpful to do some tenant education, recognizing though, that some folks are gonna call and not understand, and that does take some staffing. But if we can at least have some sort of a flyer or letter or something that at least if tenants know that if their property is being converted, that there may be something they can do, that would at least be a helpful step.
If I could, I would also sort of friendly, maybe it's suggest that we're also would include in that, and we've talked in the office about it, we can have follow-up, of course, if needed, but letting the property owners, of course, know as well, right?
Yes,
To the same- yeah,
right,
and I think we all agree on
right.
that too, right?
I
So
think
that-
you even did that, I thought, or no.
We're correct, exactly, exactly, so
Yeah.
that as much as possible, both the
Yeah.
folks who will be impacted, as well as the folks who actually are responsible for complying.
Right, should
you know,
notify
have
them
been
somewhere.
plenty warned in advance, so we can say,
Yeah.
look, we've gotten these letters for the last however many years, whatever,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, right, so, yeah.
Yeah, so the way that it works in Salem since adoption is if an owner wants to convert, they need to notify the city, I think pretty soon, and then they need to get what we call a conditional conversion permit. And the owner who wants to the owner who wants to convert needs to make sure they follow all the different things that's required in terms of tenant notification, first right of refusal, things like that. They need to check off all those boxes and then wait a certain period, the notice period, however long that is. And then they get the permit to convert, and then they can convert. Some people might think that, hey, I don't want to wait that long. But the state law has that kind of 1 year period. I think it's 1 year. I'm not so sure, but the state law gives you the power to do that right now, minus the kind of conditional conversion permit that Salem has in place. Reiterating what I'm already hearing from Karen and everyone else is that you can send a flyer brochure out to tenants if you can find a way to reach them to say the state, you have rights as a tenant. But I will just say that the state law doesn't give you a lot. So the relocation fee is at $750. Some property owners will just happily pay that. So I'm not so sure if the state law says what it says about increasing the rent during notice period. I think it's like index at consumer price index that you can't increase it to a certain level. But Salem, that increase is just kind of prohibited, I believe. But there are things that you can do in your local ordinance that can tweak some of those things, like your relocation payment should be this, or you cannot evict or increase the rent during the notice period. That you can do. If you feel like the state law doesn't go far enough and you want to dedicate some time to educate and enforce some aspects of the state law, you can do that. The relocation fee, when I saw it, I was like, this is a joke. Nobody's going to be able to go somewhere with $750. So I think those are little tweaks that you can consider to amend your local ordinance that would be meaningful. Even if you don't have staff time, at least you can amend it and then announce and say, hey, we just changed this ordinance. As a renter, you should know that you're entitled to 3,000 or however much you want to increase it to, if you are given notice to vacate because of conversion. So those are things I think you can do without a lot of staff time committed. But again, amending a local ordinance does take time and political will, so that's something to consider as well.
Well, thank you so much, Christine. We're indebted to you. And you've given us a lot.
Happy to help.
You've given us a lot of information to take under consideration for future discussion. So thank you so much. And
Yeah, and also, like I said to Andy and Caitlin, if you just have one-off questions, I'm also happy to answer them. I just can't write a full ordinance like I did for Salem. I don't have that kind of time. But if you just have a question like, hey, just kind of in the same vein as Andrew's line of questioning, like what was your experience with the home rule petition, things like that. Just happy to be a sounding board.
Great.
thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, good to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Can I hop
Take
off?
Thanks, Chris.
I'll just hop off? Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.
care. Okay. Thanks for bringing Christine into our discussion. So moving right along, because we've got more on our agenda.
Am I allowed to comment
Yeah,
or ask a question? Sorry, I was late.
I just want to say, Barb, we are going to introduce you. We sort of moved the section, the beginning of the agenda towards after we have some our visitors.
And I'm not sworn in, so I don't know if I can talk yet, but
Oh.
I wasn't able to take the ethics class yet, so I didn't go get sworn in, but I'm hoping to get that done tomorrow. Really quickly, so at the end of this, my takeaway is there's two types of condo conversions. There's in general, I own a big house or a Victorian and I want to do a condo conversion, make two condos. I live here now, I own it, no one's renting it. We don't care about that, right? The other option, the other alternative is there's a rental unit and that's gonna be converted to condos, so they're gonna want the tenant to leave to do the conversion so they can then sell, right? It's the second thing that is of concern, right?
I mean, I'm not the be all end all here, but my sense is we are concerned about the loss of rental inventory because we know
Yeah.
that that meets a different kind of housing need. We want housing stock, so we don't want just single family housing. And in addition, we are concerned about the displacement of existing tenants.
Okay.
So it's sort of two levels of concern. It's not so much a concern about losing sort of large houses to being broken up into multiple units, although that is a different concern that some people in the city might have. But, you know, this is really sort of more about,
Loss of affordable housing.
yeah, and rental stuff because there's
Some
some.
people kind of be kicked to the street without having anywhere to go, without any
Okay.
money
Yeah,
to.
when you're ready, or whenever the right time is for me to share, I have so many ideas because as a real estate agent, owners come to us directly first, and they say, what do? I want to make condos, I want to convert to condos. And then they have to go to a real estate attorney to draw up condo docs. So there could be a huge education among realtors
Mhm.
that would inform them, and it would be so easy to get that education out through multiple vehicles, so.
Right?
Yeah.
If I could, I would just add though to that, at least from my perspective, any information that's passed out there, we have to recognize that there's a rotation sometimes of the realtors, and so,
It would be
knowing.
ongoing.
Knowing that everybody who's actually actively doing work in the community or might be involved with these, we also, that's not, it's a moving target, so to speak, right? So, I totally agree with the idea of, educating the real estate community, right? But I also know from experience that they don't necessarily all understand every facet of what goes on, don't necessarily translate everything through, and unfortunately, the rotation that happens would require us to remind folks, and that's why I think like doing something, whether it's, yearly or twice a year or something, where we reach out to everybody, the realtors, the property owners, and renters, and try to do some information, we get ahead of the chasing and cleaning up a mess later on that because somebody went to record the documents and got,
Yeah.
was there.
Yeah, and every brokerage has an office manager that can
Right.
blast to every subscriber under that thing.
Right.
Then there's also zoning attorneys, they could be involved, so just educating them with a blast. And all the real estate attorneys educating them, I mean, it would be easy to get the information out,
Mhm.
so, all right, and I can help with that.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so now we are going to meet with Megan from the Essex County Habitat for Humanity. Here, yeah, Megan O'Neill.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here tonight.
Much for joining us. And Drew, is this a connection that you brought to him?
Indirectly. So Megan, we've not met, but, my colleague Lori Burzlaff, I know, has worked with the organization. She's on the Affordable Housing Trust in North Andover, where I work. And I was inquiring with her about the critical home repair program there, its connection to Habitat for Humanity, and, I know we've been looking at that here in Newburyport, so that's the roundabout connection there.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you for bringing me in tonight to talk a little bit about this program. I think everybody thinks of Habitat and knows that we build homes. You may not know quite as well the work that we've been doing primarily over the past 5 years or so. We had done a little bit of this prior, but primarily over the past 5 years, what we came to understand is it's not only the construction of new homes that's important, but also the preservation of existing homes. And so if you could hit the next slide on this for me. So what I'd like to do tonight is talk with you a little bit about the program that we are operating, and then you can stop me at any point as we go through, but I'm also happy to answer questions at the end or as we go. So all of these pictures as we're going through are projects that we've done throughout Essex County. So I've got some numbers and some information, but I also have some things that for you to look at as we're going along. So our critical home repair and aging in place program focuses on single family owner occupied homes and condos. So it's not rental units, it's not working on things that are owned by landlords, although we get some inquiries. It is just for owner occupied. And then it's also the same guidelines as we use for our home ownership programs, which is less than 60% of area median income. So that's a household of 4 earning less than about $100,000 a year. Although what I will tell you for this program, and this was a surprise to me when I first started reviewing some of these applications, primarily what we see for this is elderly people who are living just off of Social Security or off of Social Security and a small pension. And so these are 1 or 2 people living off of $24,000 a year. And I don't know if you can imagine trying to pay for food, your taxes, your homeowner's insurance, your heat, your medication, and do that all on $24,000 a year. But these are individuals and couples primarily who are getting by until something goes wrong. And they just do not have the room in their budget to manage that. There's no requirement that those serve elderly and disabled homeowners, but the reality is that's who we are seeing in this program, is primarily elderly and disabled homeowners. These are primarily folks that have owned their home for 30 years plus, have paid off their mortgage, and are at a point where their fixed income is not able to support their housing needs at this point. And most of the projects that we do are in the $5,000 to $30,000 range. If you could hit the next slide on this. Thank you. So we do 5 different types of projects. This is 2 of them. It's focused on sound condition of the home. So if water is getting into the home through the roof, through the side, if there is big gaps in weatherization, insulation, things like that. Although sometimes we can refer to another agency who also has funding for that. So we really look at what's the most efficient use of funds on that, but that is something that we sometimes are able to cover. If you could hit the next slide on this. And then critical life safety issues, code violations, electrical, plumbing, heating. We're sometimes going into homes where someone hasn't had hot water for more than a year. It's amazing to me that there are people living in Essex County who are living without heat, without hot water. Until we started this program, I didn't know some of the conditions that people were living in. They are, and they're living, they're your neighbors. And then the other sort of side of this work is the part of it that helps people stay safely in their homes. So that can be things like ramp access or walk-in showers. So part of it is about the home itself, and then part of it is about the accessibility to the home. If you could hit the next slide on this. So here's how the program works for us. Generally, we get an inquiry. It can be online. We have a form on our website. It can be a phone call. And we go through just a couple very basic screening questions to make sure that in fact, the person owns their home, and that they fall within our general income guidelines, just to kind of understand some of the very basics. Then we get the complete documentation on that, where we're checking, is in fact the deed in their name? Do they have homeowners insurance? All of the documentation that we really need to confirm that their income is in fact what they say their income is. We are verifying all of that. We then send out our critical home repair site supervisor to do the site visit with our homeowner services person. The 2 of them go together to do the walkthrough, meet the homeowner, and actually evaluate. Sometimes we find that homeowners will just list one thing on their home, on their list of what needs to get done, and we go out there and find there is in fact some other very serious safety concerns or other things that really need to be addressed in this house. And then there are other folks who will list a whole list of things that they would like to have done. And we go through and evaluate, okay, well, some of these are, I'd love new counters or new flooring in my bathroom too, but there's not actually a safety concern there. So we go through and evaluate what are the things that need to get done in this situation. We put together the project proposal. I approve that. We get the project funded, we go out, we complete the work, and in some cases we're subbing that out. So if it's roofing, we're subbing that out. If it's electrical, we're subbing that out. We also have a site supervisor who can do some of the work himself. So he's a licensed site supervisor, so he can do some of that. We bring in a couple of volunteers to help with some of the work, and then we invoice the municipality when the work is complete. And next slide. So there are basically 3 people on our staff team who handle most of this work. our homeowner services, our construction supervisor, and our finance person. Make sure that all of I heard you talking earlier about making sure that you had the staffing to do the work. And I know when we work with the municipalities, that is always the challenge. Staff teams on the municipal side are really short staffed. And so it's important that we are able to handle all of this piece of it. If you could hit the next slide. These are the communities that we are working in, plus Middleton. We just signed up this past month. So we just added one more community in as well. That picture there is actually in West Newbury, where we built a ramp into the garage of the homeowner. She wanted to be able, she has her car parked in her garage and wanted to be able to access the car in her garage. And next slide, if you would. And I'll just show you a couple of the projects that we've done. So this was a homeowner in Lawrence. Her daughter called us. She is in her 80s, and she was living entirely independently, but could no longer get in and out of the bathtub and safely use the toilet. And so this was a simple bathroom modification. And mom and daughter are both thrilled because Charlene is going to be able to maintain her independence because of this bathroom modification that we did for her. Next slide. And I think people are sometimes surprised that we have trailer parks in Essex County, but we do. In Peabody on Route 1, you probably, as I'm saying it, are going, oh yeah, I never thought about those. As you drive down Route 1 in Peabody, there are mobile homes. And so we have done a lot of work on the mobile homes in Peabody. This bathroom, this kitchen, the floor was entirely rotted out. There was no solid surface in this kitchen. She was walking around holes. The back deck was entirely rotted out. The windows in this kitchen water was coming in. So we were able to give her just a safe and sound and dry place to live. If you could hit the next slide on this one. And Julio and Julia live in Lawrence. They are also in their 80s. They've been in their home more than 35 years. And their washer and dryer are in the basement, and the stairs to their basement were totally rotted out. And so, and they're accessed out to their backyard also. So we were able to just replace their basement stairs for them. And so they can safely get up and down stairs to be able to do their laundry each week, which I don't know how many of you have parents in their 80s. I am at that point now, and boy, do I like, well, I would prefer that her laundry not be in her basement, but if it is in the basement, I sure as heck want her on safe stairs to be able to do that. And next slide. I think that might be it. And a couple happy homeowners just to show you what it looks like when we are done. I am happy to answer any questions that you have about the program and how it works. I did not have anywhere near the detailed slides that Christine had with graphs and charts and
Thank you so much, Megan. I think my understanding of the program is that income limit is set at 60% area median income, is that correct?
You got it.
And the communities that you're working with are funding this through Community Preservation Act funds, is that correct?
Affordable Housing Trust funds, yeah.
Right, okay, so they could be coming from a variety of
A
sources.
variety of sources, yep. Yeah,
okay.
some are using CDBG funds, some are using, in some communities we have grant funds. So it really depends on by community which sources of funds we're using. The most recent ones though have just been Affordable Housing Trust funds, yeah.
And then you put a lien on the property which burns off over 10 years, is that correct?
Yeah, the municipality is putting the lien on the property. And it is a 10-year forgiveness period, I think is what most municipalities are doing.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have?
Yeah, I do. Hi, Megan, this is Karen. We just met the other
Hi,
day at the
Karen.
lab.
Yes,
Nice to see you.
Yay, twice in 1 week.
Yeah, and what about what for Humanity? Do you then charge municipalities for running the program? How does that
Yeah,
work?
oh, yes, yeah. So, we are charging, the direct cost of our staff. So we have one paid staff person who is doing the labor and, all of that, construction work. And then any subs and materials, and then $850 per project. So the $850 covers our time to go out and do the assessment and the, all of the paperwork for each project. And that, and then we do 15% on each project for overhead. And I don't know if I sent that to Caitlin, but if I didn't, I will send that to you. Caitlin, do you have that? The
No, I
agreement?
don't think I have that. That would be helpful.
Okay,
Unless I have.
that's the agreement that we have with North Andover. You
Oh,
got some
yeah.
other agreements with them, or some of the other documentation from them. I didn't realize you didn't have that one. I will send that to you. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And sorry, one more follow-up with the 10-year period. So it's like, if the person moves in 2 years or something, they pay back some portion of it? Is that the
Yes.
idea?
Yeah, so the way that I'm encouraging municipality, every municipality can set it up as they would like. But and I like the way Middleton just set theirs up actually. Middleton did just totally forgivable if it's a project less than $5,000, total forgiveness on it, because I think partly they didn't want to go through,
Yeah.
how much legal paperwork do you want to go through for a $3,000 project, right? But anything above that, there is zero forgiveness for the first 5 years, and then 20% forgiveness for each of the next 5 years. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I was just gonna make, this is more of a comment, I know the question about how it is being funded came up in CPA. I haven't done the due diligence yet to determine if it's CPA eligible. I was under the impression North Andover took a CPA allocation, the Affordable Housing Trust there took a CPA allocation, and then they dedicated a portion of that towards this program. That doesn't mean that they did it right, so I have to, sometimes you find out after the fact that something's not eligible, so I'd have to look at it, but my view is, if you're doing this, if you're structuring it so that you're ensuring that any, the only way to be eligible here is a homeowner that is 60% AMI, that's enough, you're benefiting a low income homeowner. So, it's kind of, you could argue that this is a preservation of affordable housing initiative, so to speak. That's my view. But that doesn't mean that's the way that the CPA coalition sees it or the state sees it, so we'd have to confirm.
Yeah, I sent an email to them
But,
today.
yeah, I'm reasonably confident.
Yeah, because they have the homeowner, what's it called? There's a program. Home modification
Yeah,
loan program,
right.
yeah.
And we had the woman from CTI
Yeah,
come and
right,
speak to us
right.
about the home.
I am honored to.
Mod
Yeah.
program,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you're aware of, Megan, the home.
The one that CDAC operates?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And
Yeah, and there are times where there's one homeowner that we worked with that we encouraged to do both this, because we cap our program at $30,000 and she was going to need more than that. So, there are times where we pull in multiple sources of funding.
Right, and the home modification loan program can go up to 200% area median income.
Yes.
Is very different from
Yes.
60% AMI.
Okay.
But it is more focused on accessibility,
Yes.
but they try
You say
to be broad in that definition. So, but that's how it was initially envisioned was about helping people with mobility limitations. But I think they've tried to, like I said, be sort of somewhat flexible in their guidelines around that. But I'm not sure if the lien on the property burns off over 10 years. I think perhaps not. I think it is there
I think
and
it stays, yeah,
you think it fades?
It stays.
Yeah.
It stays, yeah, that's my understanding.
yeah,
So there's differences, and, you know, some homeowners might be, you know, really reluctant to put a lien on their property that doesn't go away. So it's wonderful that we have two different programs to learn more about and to, you know, think about what might be a good fit here in Newburyport.
yes.
I have one more question. Is there, I'm just picturing a situation where someone lives in a house that is now valued at, you know, $1 million, but their income may be just social security, so they may fit sort of the 60% AMI, but they could theoretically like take out a, you know, home equity line. Is there some kind of like asset limitation, or there's not?
There is an asset limit, but it excludes the value of the home. So the home does not is not included in that.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So any other questions, comments?
Actually, one more, I'd seen, I know you had some communication with Caitlin prior to this, and I think you indicated that, you're not currently staffed to handle a new community at this point, but maybe later this, or I'm sorry, maybe, later this, next year.
Yeah, in
you
the
would
spring
be,
we could do that. Yeah,
So you're in a position, basically, if we were to be interested in moving forward with something like this, you could be in a position to take this on, at some point in the near future.
yes. Yeah, if you said you were ready to go in December, I would say, whoa, give us a little time on that. But if you said for spring, we could be reasonably ready to go. Yes.
That's great.
I have one more question. I know you're working in a number of different communities. I'm wondering, you sort of what scale, like, is it, I'm sure it depends on how much funding you have committed.
Yeah.
But like, how many houses might you do in a community?
So it really depends on the community, how many homes we're doing. And some of the communities, like we just started in North Andover 3 months ago, so we don't really know yet. Middleton, we just started a month ago. Peabody, we've been doing for 4 years, and we probably do 15 homes a year there. So, you know, it depends, like I said, on the community. One thing that I would say is it really helps if there's a strong relationship with the Council on Aging and referrals from the Council on Aging, because sometimes people don't know about the program or they're hesitant. So sometimes the people who most need the help are reluctant to ask for the help. And so in Peabody, for example, we have a great relationship with a social worker at the Council on Aging who says, you know, you should apply for this program. Here's the paperwork, and connects people directly with our homeowner services person. So, and our homeowner services person can go to the Council on Aging and meet with people and help them with the paperwork. But when there is that relationship, that makes it much easier.
That all makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Megan. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. What a
Yes,
great
and I know you've got a busy agenda, so I will let you get to it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Very interesting.
Yeah, a very educational evening.
I know.
I know.
Okay, so I think it would be great to move to the beginning of the agenda. Where I welcome people, check that, done. Although we're gonna go back to introducing ourselves, because we have a new member of our trust, Cullen, and I think we're so happy to have you here. I think it would be great if we could go around the table and introduce ourselves. I already know Barb, I'm Madeline Nash, I've been serving as the co-chair for a while. But Suzanne Cameron stepped down, so now I'm the lone chair for the moment. Barb, just so you know, I've been in the affordable housing business for a while, currently working for Community Economic Development Assistance Corporation, also known as CEDAC, which was just mentioned by Megan. Anyways, I've been on the trust since its formation, something like 14 years ago. And very happy to have you here. And I'm gonna pass it over to Drew.
Drew Shapiro, and we've spoken on the phone. Nice to see in person, I've been on the trust for about, I would say about 3 years now, something like that. And I have a background in municipal government, municipal management, but with a, mostly a background in urban and regional planning. So worked on a lot of housing projects, including affordable housing policy, at the local level. So,
Awesome.
we have there.
Pass it on to Karen.
Oh,
Bob,
sorry,
then pass it on to
I
Bob.
pointed to Bob,
Oh, great,
my
great.
apologies, I didn't mean to.
No, I didn't see it.
I thought we were gonna swing back this way.
I'm Bob Freer, industrial commercial broker, concentrating on affordable housing for the last 15 or so, 20 years of my career, still doing it. I'm very passionate about affordable housing in Newburyport because we just don't have any. And we're losing units, she just described. 176 we've lost in the last 5 years. So we need to be able to create affordable housing. And whether it's through ownership or through rentals, it doesn't matter to me. I'm working on several projects that hopefully, if they can flip themselves over, we can present it to the bigger developers that do this, not the small. I'm talking 50 to 100, 150, 200 units of affordable housing, where a community can be built. And whether they're ADU sized up to 900 square feet or whatever, doesn't matter. It's the question is, yes, let's try it. And if we have a chunk of land we can do that with, then we can sit down and figure out how to make it work.
Hi, I'm Elaine Nickerson. I've been on the trust for a year, 2 years, or I think. And my background, I'm retired now, but I was in affordable housing. On the post-development side, I did monitoring of compliance with federal and state funded private development programs. So home and HSF, affordable housing trust funds, and then a whole alphabet soup of other funding sources from the state. So I'm not well versed, and I try to learn as much as I can on the pre-development financing kind of stuff, but I'm more attuned to the post-development, how the living situations, the income certifications, that kind of stuff. There's certainly a lot of opportunities here in Newburyport to develop more affordable housing. I do get maybe a little too passionate about it when I talk to the council and stuff, but I'm learning to be calm.
I haven't learned that yet. I'm Karen Weiner. I, like Madeline, I started with the formation of the Affordable Housing Trust. I was working for Citizens Housing and Planning Association, CHAPA, if you're familiar with them, until June 30th. I retired, actually. So, but I was there for 35 years, and my experience spans the the overall general, affordable housing field.
And I don't know if you know Andy Ford and Caitlin from the planning department.
Andy Ford, Director of Planning and Development, affordable housing is a huge issue for Newburyport, I think increased over time, just because of the market prices, right? So, we're making various efforts around the city, which I'm sure we'll talk about more, some of us we've talked about here already, for the 40-yard district, or came on redevelopment or other areas, city, and the accessory dwelling units and whatnot, but, our role is to help with, the programs, Caitlin does most of the work in the housing, end of things, with a couple of our boards we work with. But the zoning and the permitting and so forth is also a factor for us, in addition to any programs or things like that. So as we talk about ordinances, we think about that as well. So we're here basically as staff as a resource to the trust and other boards and commissions to facilitate all the tools and techniques that we have here. So.
And I'm Caitlin Sullivan. We spoke on the phone for a while the other day. Worked with the trust for several years now, including also zoning board of appeals and planning board and some of the other committees we have around town. You'll be hearing from me a lot. I help administer the down payment assistance program and rental assistance program. So any questions you have, or you can always email me.
And Barb, you wanna introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. I've lived in Newburyport for 29 years. I'm a former neighbor down the street from Madeline, so I've known her for a long time. And I've raised two daughters here. They're both born at Anna Jake's, and I was on the foundation board of Anna Jake's for maybe 7 or 8 years, and I've worked in nonprofits before. I worked in corporate, so I had a whole career in corporate sales operations and management, and then made the transition over to real estate 13 years ago, and I enjoy it. And it's hard work, and it's grueling, and it's a grind, and it's nothing like what people think it is. And I'm a therapist to people, and I walk people on the ledge every day, and I put out fires every day, and I advocate for people every day. I didn't really know anything about the Affordable Housing Trust, except that Madeline was involved, because over a decade ago, I heard you talking about it. I was watching you talk about it. I was watching your letters to the paper. So, but I didn't really know much about it. But having been in real estate, I've learned just on the fly about the Chapter 40B, and then in the last 12 months, I did help a seller of an affordable housing unit, and I helped a buyer of an affordable housing unit, and I didn't know the mechanics of it until then, and I was fascinated by it. So, and of my 44 transactions last year, so helping people buy and sell, my most exciting one was helping the buyer to buy an affordable housing unit, because it changed her life. So that, when I heard about this potential opening, I want to learn, and I'm a life learner, so I'm always trying to learn something. So I'm very open-minded, very neutral. And so, thank you for including me.
Certainly, well, welcome. So happy to have you. You should ask us questions as we, have our meetings, and also just like Caitlin said, she's a wealth of information. One of the things that we have on our agenda, is to talk about our next application for CPA funds. So if you may have already gone to the city website where you see the different programs that we administer. Many of them are funded with CPA funds. So as the year goes by, these funds get used and might need to be replenished. And annually, we have to submit an application to the Community Preservation Committee. They, as you may know, 10% of the CPA funds must be dedicated to affordable housing needs. If the city doesn't, or if the CPC committee doesn't get applications that are at least 10% of the allocation, they can opt to put those funds aside for a future request. But I think every year, our group has submitted an application, and there are also the other entities that might submit an application, and sometimes the city, through its planning department, will submit an application that's housing related, right? So I'd like to just sort of open it up to discussion of the members here on thoughts on what we might want to request to the CPC this year. And yes, Bob?
Since we've, given, I think it's $400,000 to the Brown School, that number's correct. That depletes us down pretty much. And if other projects coming along need contributions from the Affordable Housing Trust, we have to think about that 10% cap being way too low.
It's not a cap.
And I think we need to ask for.
It's a minimum.
It's a minimum.
It's a minimum.
That's a minimum, so I think it should be up to. You know, personally, I think we should start off with $1 million because we got this another project coming. And there are others coming down the pike, and we can start to bank that money so that. If a project comes along that the Affordable Housing Trust can run, we need to have some money to do that. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts?
Sorry?
Well, can I ask you a question? So,
Sure.
we, maybe, we can talk about like kind of the core things that we do, which is, I think, probably the most pressing thing to, or the most pressing thing to really kind of consider, but just based on like, the presentation you just heard about the critical home repair program. I guess my question is, this is more to Andy and Caitlin, so there's an aspect of it that requires some staff intervention and time, so I guess my question to you guys is, do you think that if we had the funding to move forward with that, do you think that there's capacity in the planning department to do what's necessary to help run the program? Or do you think we need amplified staffing, or where do you think we are?
For that, yeah, I think it depends on, there's other projects or programs, obviously, I think, I appreciate your question, because I think we would have to have a discussion depending on what it was. I think in this case, yeah, it's,
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it's similar to the down payment assistance program, I think, where we would have a template and draft, the affordable housing restriction.
Yep.
so not as huge a proportion of like a disproportionate impact on staff time needed to run it, which is, I appreciate the question, actually, it's yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's the question, and then it's like, it's sort of a two-parter, and then I just open it up to the board to see if like, you guys think that it's assuming that we do the due diligence to ensure that it is eligible, which I believe it is, do we wanna set aside some amount of our ask for that program to open it up as a new endeavor for the tribe?
I think that the amount of money that we're gonna require if we get involved with the Habitat for Humanity approach is gonna be significant.
Well, what's
do you
significant to you?
At least $500,000 in the first year.
All right, well, I'll just stop you there, and I'm not saying this means that this is what the project's gonna cost, but just for context.
Right.
North Andover, put aside $150,000,
Okay,
and they're bigger than us, they have more housing units, they have more population, so I was gonna suggest like 100,000.
okay, fine.
Now, you might be absolutely, Bob, you may end up being 100% correct.
That's okay.
We may turn out that the demand is far greater than 100,000, but just, and then, maybe North Andover didn't plan accordingly, and I'm basing it off that. But just, it's, it could be just we're doing it, maybe we adopt this on a pilot basis to see what happens, and then in year two, we can ramp it up significantly. If the demand.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
I find it really attractive. I think of the people who are living in this, it's sort of a quiet little population of people who are struggling, who are living in a home that they're just, you just can kind of picture them. Knocking around in a house without being able to go downstairs to do their laundry. I just think it's not a lot of money for those repairs, and I think it might be not as much, I think it's worth trying if we can do it for a small amount of staff time. For not a lot of money, it could have a huge impact on a few people. I like the idea. I really do. Didn't we have someone come, excuse me, sorry, I'm sorry, let me just finish. Didn't we have someone come in and talk to us about, it wasn't an elderly person, it was a daughter or a niece who lived in the area who had some repairs that needed to be done in their house and they were low income and so that's, I mean, there are people out there who are, you know, overhoused, so yes, go ahead.
No, thank you, through the chair. I think one, just a data point that might be helpful is we asked the assessor's office to look at those who are currently qualified for 41C, 17D. Those are all the tax exemptions, that's roughly 68 families or households. So if you do that, those people most likely follow the income requirements that have that be met. So if you take 10% of that, that's 6. So, you know, if you want to do 6 times 30, that's why you're right. It could max that out, but I also think in the first year, another trend that we've seen, at least in the assessor's office, is when people hear the word lien, they really need to be educated on it. So that's why I don't think you'd even get close to that original, like, if you said 10% of that group, I think you would actually probably be close to like 3, to be honest, because I think it would definitely be those who most want it. So I think that makes more sense. So if you do 3 times 30, like 100,000, that's just me doing quick math. So I just wanted to say that, just some helpful data that we've been doing with that. So,
I think that one of the things I forgot to mention that in that, the reason that's $500,000 is part of that money is to support Andy's department with us hiring somebody to do the administration necessary to make some of these programs work.
Well, so that's why I asked
Yeah.
my first question, which is if like existing staff capacity could cover
Right.
this, and I mean, I believe me, as someone who works in municipal government, I always am trying to be sensitive and cognizant of like, you know, when new programs are coming about, like, okay, you know, don't take for granted that someone's gonna have to do the work now, you know, so you're 100% correct. But it sounds like this could theoretically be absorbed and not necessarily be that much of an hourly increase over what's already being done to administer like the other programs that are have some similarities to this, like having to prepare an affordable housing restriction, for instance. You know, I don't know about the lien, I don't know if that's something that's handled through, if you do that with another program.
We can handle that piece of it there. I think, it's really just affecting who wants to engage in another, I mean, we can handle that, gets to your point. Yeah, those are all form-based, right? They're standard form for the most part, so it's really just administering it and, with our existing capacity, I think, but.
It's like plugging
some
in
programs-
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have to
some-
do a homeowner
some
rehab and
programs.
get 3 bids on,
Yeah.
you know, building stair, that would be a whole lot different story.
Well,
That takes
that's
time.
something.
That's something
that's-
that Habitat takes care of.
Right, exactly.
But it takes time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, guys.
I've worked with Megan on, the Institution for Savings as a low to moderate income lender. And I work specifically with Megan on our Habitat builds, and a large portion of the time commitment in these projects is the vetting of the families who apply. And the family selection committee goes out and views and interviews the families who need this the most.
Yeah.
That would be something else, a side committee that you would need to do to truly vet who applies for this, who is the most in need. And really, is Habitat offering to do that process, or would?
That's part of it.
Habitat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would do that, yeah.
That looks great.
Yeah. Can you give me a sense of what that income would be? Because so many of these programs, when you look in Newburyport, because I'm at the COA all the time, they don't qualify. So could you just give me an idea of income?
So she was saying that 60% AMI for a family of 4 would be roughly $100,000 total income.
But most of the people that I'm thinking about, the family of 2.
Yeah, so a 2-family, I'm not sure what that would end up being, but it would probably be, you could probably have it or, you know.
I can look it up.
We'll get it for
Yeah,
you.
Look it up.
we can get it for you, I don't wanna just spitball numbers.
And I think that before you look at that, not that I don't love this program, trust me,
Yeah.
I'm psyched that you're talking about this, and I'm the lady that came in.
Oh, yeah.
And, she didn't lose the house, but that's the way it goes.
Oh.
That's what I think you need to find out, because so many of the people in Newburyport, that's the sad thing, they don't qualify. And
Because their incomes are higher.
okay, so what hits, in this group? You thought you were so smart and you bought all these plans, you know, now you turn 70 and you have to start in. So most people get their mandatory distribution of 15 to 20,000 a year. So even if you only had 50, you jump to 70. you're not qualified for anything. So that's why I was kind of interested in that, because,
Right.
you know, well,
So-
in Newburyport,
Yeah,
that happens. to be-
Totally hear you. I think this is not gonna be a program that meets everybody's needs.
Right.
Oh, no,
But, that's one of the things we were talking about, the home modification loan program. I think you were here when the woman from CTI Community Teamwork.
yes,
And so that program currently allows people at 200% area median income, so much higher. Now, but it is, again, more focused on accessibility. But that could be, you know, moving the washer and dryer upstairs. It could be putting in a new bathroom, right? You know, that, you know, you
Anything.
can walk into.
anything that you can do to help the people, you know, like, if this program only helps 8 people, 5 people, that's 5 who
Right.
can stay in their home, that's a big plus. And if there's an opportunity for a different program for a different range, that's over the moon, that's great.
Yeah, I think this, if we moved forward with the program administered by Habitat, it could be an opportunity to educate people about other funding sources for home modification. So, you know, you'd be meeting with a family that is over income, well, maybe there's this other funding source.
Well, and it sounds like Habitat does some of that. Like when they're doing their evaluation, they could say, okay, well, actually, you know, based on what we're seeing in this home and based on your income level and your situation, you know, you might be more better serviced by going this route. Or combinations. You said there's some cases where they'll do some portion of it is funded through, you know, the local, whatever program, you know, the critical home repair program, and another would be, another portion of it would be covered by another program, so. I think, look, I think you make great points, and I think, you know, this covers a specific need that, you know, I think. You know, one of the things you wanna do in your report, and Bob, you're on the, you're on the senior affordable, no, the senior affordability task force.
I know.
I look at something like this as being applicable to the work and the mission that they're trying to accomplish. You know, if the people that are disproportionately affected by issues in their home, you know, going unaddressed because they don't have the income to do those projects, that can be often an issue
One
that's
thing not to
affecting
forget
seniors.
is we start with Habitat for Humanity,
Yeah.
and they get involved in the community. The newspaper does articles on them and so on. All of a sudden, you will find there are people in town that believe in them, and the contributions will start to come into them.
Oh, yeah.
For the city of Newburyport.
I agree. I think it'd be great, yeah. So anyway, I think it'd be great if we if we ask for at least $100,000 to support this program, if others agree. That's the long-winded road, that I was going down to get to,
Great.
to that suggestion.
Thank you.
So 2 comments, one to let Jane know that the 50% area median income for this area is for 2 people is 66,200.
Thank you.
So if you want to calculate 60%,
Don't do it. Don't do the math. You'll get it wrong.
but so it must be a little bit higher than that for 60%. We can
Makes
calculate.
Much appreciated, thank you.
Yeah.
What was it?
And secondly, I just want to say,
What was it, 50?
sorry, Kristen, what,
What was that?
at 66,200 for 2 people. Does that sound?
So around 70.
39.4.
You've got a math.
Yeah, did you say 66.2? 66.2, yeah, that's what I have, and then
Yeah.
I have 60% is here on this actual HUD user thing, is, I
Okay.
have 662, and 60% is 69,440.
Okay.
I mean, sorry, 79,440,
At 60?
at 60% area median income,
Yeah.
and,
That's good.
and 80% is 105,850. Yeah, there you go.
Depending on which town in Essex County.
Well, no, this is for the Boston area median income,
Yeah.
Boston area, of which Newburyport is part of.
Unfortunately,
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about, ideas for CPA application. One is sort of like a pilot program for this, Habitat for Humanity housing rehab program, and then also a request to replenish some of our funds, because we've made significant commitments already to the Brown School.
and anticipate more.
Well, that is possible, but when we were requesting funds for the Brown School several years ago, we argued that it might be for a Brown school, it might be something else, right? And we wanted, if an opportunity presents itself, especially one that is seeking public funding, we would need to have, some funds set aside to provide matching funds for competitive applications at the state. So I do think that that is a consideration. We also, I think, need to replenish our funds for our rental assistance program, right? We're down to something like 25,000 right
Under
now.
20, yep,
Pardon?
under 20.
Under 20.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know where the economy's going, but it could be that we might see an increased demand for that program in the years to come. So, that's 3 potential uses. We're okay, I think, with our down payment assistance.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would suggest, Caitlin, that we'd be thinking about?
No, I think those 3 applications, I think would be good. I mean, we could always do a priority housing needs like you've done in the past and say including, rental assistance, replenishment. So it'd be 2 applications going to the CPC. Or we could do 3, up to you.
I like your suggestion of 2.
You can't just do one and just tag it and just sort of subdivide underneath and just say this is the whole thing.
It might be easier though for the CBC and the council to parse off, in terms of the, actual practical process. That's part of the reason I think we're thinking that it might make more sense to do that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Like at least 2.
Well,
Since they're doing a pilot project.
I can't help but think that people would be interested to hear about a new initiative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair.
And I think it's something that would speak to public concerns in a way that is something new and exciting. Hopefully there'll be some demand for it. So we don't have to talk about it further, but it sounds like we've got some ideas. When is the application due?
December 12th, so you'd want to make a decision at your next meeting. I
Right.
think if you were to have another one before then.
Okay. Yes, we should definitely meet before, to give us time to pull together the details. Any other discussion on that? Have any questions?
No, I think these programs are very exciting and I meet people quite often who are in need and have gaping holes in their floors and things like that.
Okay. So, next thing, update on right of first refusal, 6 Woodman Way.
Yep, so that unit closed today.
Yeah.
So that's all set. I think we just, I guess, receive and file that notice and there's no further action required.
That's great.
So we didn't have to actually, because I know we held off on waiving last time because of this concern that what if they don't find a buyer, but they did, so we don't have to actually waive it though? For them to
No, it's like a
accept the,
concurrent right of first refusal that you could have sent something in, but they would have had to gone through 12 buyers, I think, in order to have ever gotten to us.
okay.
It's a universal deed rider and that's the way.
Oh,
You have the right of first
Yeah.
refusal for the first 30 days,
got it.
but it doesn't, they've adapted it so that you don't have to wait 30 days, because usually the municipality doesn't want to buy the unit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, great, thanks, Caitlin. Bob, do you want to give us a brief update on the senior affordability
Sure, I can
task
do
force?
it. I also have in the room Christian Sear, who's running the program.
Okay,
And if he wants to give us a little update, then I can pick up the parts that you miss.
All right, thank you, Bob. So we had another meeting last week. Again, this task force includes Bob, some members of the Council on Aging, the Friends of the Council on Aging, then also city staff. We have our city assessor, our business manager at the water department. We're very much still in like the fact-finding part of it, of the task force. So a lot of our conversations, I guess what we'll say is, what's going on in the community? Where do we think seniors are feeling the affordability crunch? And what the city is currently doing and what we think we can do, moving forward. We know that there's an election next week, so hopefully everyone votes. But the idea again being that hopefully this task force by next spring, regardless of the new, if there's an administration, the new council, there will be a new council. Just to have some ideas on what can be done. So like, I'm really encouraged to see like putting a CBC application on, you know, fixing homes, because that was one thing that we were talking about. I think even another counselor was reaching out to me the other day of like, they're getting a lot of emails from older residents saying they want to find these programs. As far as our next steps, we are gonna be having, I wouldn't call them focus groups per se, but almost like open office hours here at the senior center to try to invite the public to come just give kind of like their testimony, their stories. Because right now it's really just been us talking about some of the local facts. So like, that's why I do, for example, we have roughly 69 people or households who are getting our tax exemptions. And so as far as like policy discussions so far, we've talked a lot about how it seems like there may be an appetite for like some home rule petitions moving forward. My advice to the task force so far has been, we gotta be very careful on how that is crafted. Whenever we're accepting or crafting home rule petitions that involve property taxes, that's a very nuanced debate, and you have to figure out like, how much is the discount, and is that gonna affect how much revenue the city's gonna get to provide services for residents that you're trying to help. So there's that careful balance. We've also looked a little bit at water and sewer discounts. This is just something I've been interested in. We've seen other communities give discounts. Well, some communities will be very generous and give like 10 to 20% discounts up to a certain amount for anyone over the age of 65. Yeah, I would say it's extremely generous and it's capped. Usually they put like a cap, you only get that much. It's something I think the task force should continue to explore and like use data. So actually our business manager of the water department is helping us just pull data of like, what would that look like if we did something like that in Newburyport? How do we target it to really reach the people, again, who we think are really going through this affordability crisis? An overall point I would just say is it's in Newburyport, I think we know there is definitely a population that is truly having an affordability crisis of like, I think sometimes people forget, we still have a 5% poverty rate. That doesn't mean they're all seniors, but we do have, you know, a lot of people struggling. And then like, as Jane has said, we also have that group that feels like they're right on the edge, right? Where they're not able to get any public assistance or any other help. So also trying to figure out how do we help them? That's always tough because that's it. Usually it always comes down to what is that line, right? Where do you usually have to draw a line in policy debate? So that's just my general update. So I guess I would encourage, we're getting the dates for those like open office hours. I believe they're going to be, we can send it out to the group. I think it's right now, I think it's November 13th. And then the following week, I think it's 17th. We have some time scheduled. But I have a feeling we'll continue that through December. And then regroup again and just January. But our goals again are to kind of create recommendations for both the administration and the council on what we think are potential next steps. So again, task force really is just the kickoff. Oh, one thing I did forget is trying to just create, we call it like a 4-page pamphlet. We kind of have these across the city, but specifically on affordability. So 1 page, what are the housing affordability options? Page 2, what are the services that the COA offers in town? Page 3, what are the discounts that you are able to get for utilities? That's a big thing that we just started and brought in our sustainability manager. So there's a lot of state programs that I feel like a lot of people don't realize exist. That I think it's getting that awareness. And then lastly, just community services, so non-governmental groups that are doing good work, and just trying to amplify that. People who have, I think the way you can go downstairs, you see we have a lot of resources. It's trying to compile it specifically for affordability. So we have had help in the assessor's office, for example. I've heard a few stories where people have come in, you know, they're looking for a tax exemption, they're really struggling. And it's not just the taxes. And we've started to put pamphlets there on like other resources in the community. And I've heard, you know, just testimonies so far, it's been helpful, but like, oh, Okay, I'm getting my tax exemption, but then it's like, okay, you can go find food here, you can go do this here. So it's, again, the goal here is how do we administratively kind of create a pathway for people to get the assistance they need?
Right.
One of the keys is Connie Preston is here, then November 17th is the start of the city councilors coming in here. Talk to people about issues that this committee is setting up, and she is good. That's the first person, that's next week, or 2 weeks from now. The
She's
other
coming
thing
here, meaning to this council, to
I'm
here,
sorry?
she's coming here to this, okay.
To this location, yeah, that's from 9:30 till 11:30, I think, 7:30. And 9:30 to 10:30. The other thing we're trying to do is the problem with the city's exemptions is they've been set up a million years ago. So that an elderly exemption for a single person is $40,000, and for a married couple, it's $54,000. That doesn't help a lot of people. It helps some people, but if we started with a home rule petition that said, like Cambridge does, they say X numbers of income below, you are entitled to get one. And how do you fund that? And we fund that revenue by a split tax rate. A split tax rate based upon the $660 million commercial industrial is assessed at, would give us another $6,300,000 worth of revenue that if the home rule petition is passed, we can then assign, like say, $400,000 in credit to a person's home. And that helps them tremendously, so much more, so that whole list of stuff on that page. And it doesn't take, that doesn't change anybody else's taxes. So that is the way a lot of other cities are setting this up and trying to get it done. And I think it's a real good way to stop. You know, my taxes have gone up $2,600 in the last 3 years. So I live in a little cape, and that's it. So it gets too expensive. And a lot of the elderly people that I know, that's one of the biggest complaints that they have, is that their taxes are just getting crazy. And they don't qualify for an exemption.
Right.
If a teacher retires, if 2 teachers are in a household, they're gonna be far in excess of that married, that's that income limit. So it's hard. So we need to adjust it, like Cambridge did, by saying, okay, folks, in spite of all these other programs, we're gonna give you a break.
Okay,
That's it.
I see you got a lot going on.
Question.
No, just to share with you too, that the Council on Aging has been working really hard on this for like the last 2 years.
Yeah.
They sent out the questionnaire, Paul Bushy made a chart and it shows you where you can get a free meal every single day. And they posted it, and it's a little bifold, so it's really great, so that people that need to have that done, you know that they're not gonna go without food. So, because they can, and so now they're doing one where they're going, the shop owners downtown are talking about giving you a little card, and if you buy 2 items, then on the third time you come in to buy something, they'll give you a discount. So they're trying to constantly go out and put all this stuff together to make sure that all of the folks, even some stuff as simple as you buy your first movie ticket and they give you the second one so you can go with somebody. And I know those are little things, but it does help somebody to have the extra cash to go do stuff like that. But so you should check with them because they're doing, that's kind of been their major focus now for almost over a year, so.
Okay, thanks. Just gonna move us along here. We've had a lot to digest. Oh, I didn't notice that. Hand raised?
Yeah. Hi, Mary Ann, you've been unmuted.
Hi, thank you. Mary Ann Vacy, 10 Ken Street. 2 things you made me think of. One is I have a housing spreadsheet that's just about all the very different funds that people might be able to access in the areas, cities and towns. It occurs to me the senior group might be able to utilize that information. Should I send that to Christian or Ann Freeman or Bob, or who's the best person to send it to?
That would be great if you could send it to me, Christian, this is Christian speaking.
Okay,
And
thanks,
Freeman
Christian.
loves-
Christian's
And
here.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Anne Freeman would love it also. She's the,
Okay.
Council of Aging.
Yep. And
Thank-
secondly, I wanted people to know that the Salvation Army is meeting with mostly church groups about having a more formal way of doing working with unhoused people during the freezes and possibly the heat emergencies. So it's still in the beginning stages, and we'll be meeting with the mayor, I think, in a couple of weeks. But I just wanted you to know that that is going on in case that might become something that you could possibly help support. Oh,
Thank you,
and
Mary.
sorry, one more thing is that I'm involved with a lot of social service agencies, and the number of people seeking food, even before this whole thing around SNAP ending, has increased astronomically.
Yeah.
And the number of unhoused people has also gone up, but I don't think it's yet keeping pace with the people who are needing food.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann.
You're welcome.
All right, I'm gonna move us on our agenda, other updates from Housing Trust or Planning Department.
I have something I'd like to suggest. I think Madeline and Suzanne were doing a fabulous job as co-chairs of this body, and that now Madeline's on her own, which is a lot of work potentially, and that I think that Drew Shapiro would be a wonderful co-chair. He's very experienced, he's thoughtful, he's really well versed in all these issues. So I don't know what the official process would be here, but I would like to nominate or suggest that Drew become co-chair.
I second it.
There we go, that's a formal thing.
Not sure what I did wrong.
Right. Can we take that to a vote? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Drew.
Thank you, appreciate it. Looking forward to working with you. In that capacity, that's great. And thank you for your confidence in me.
Remember, I said you were thoughtful, so.
Okay.
Prove me right.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Andy or Caitlin, do you have anything brief?
I mean, no, I mean, your letter got to the ZBA, I don't think there's anything we haven't already
And
covered
council and
tonight.
mayor.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and then the
Thank
CBA
you.
you've already discussed, I think we've covered it.
Yeah, I don't know if you, Madeline asked me to print out, the Salem report
Oh,
card
yeah,
from
if you
their
could just
housing
distribute that.
production plan. They did this midpoint, so I guess 2 years into their housing production plan, perhaps we could do something similar.
Yeah. City of Salem is doing all sorts of great things.
Wait, I got a
and
bunch of them.
I get notifications from them. And I thought people would be interested in us. I don't wanna go over it tonight, but maybe for our next meeting, people could take a look at it and think about if it's something that they think would be good for Newburyport to put some time into and maybe get some assistance from the Regional Planning Commission.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, I'm sorry, going back to the Kmart, two-part question, I didn't tune into the meeting, so where are they in the like, are they? How close are we to a decision one way or the other, and did they have any reaction to our letter, I'm just curious.
They didn't really,
No.
they were so
Yeah,
focused on a lot of
yeah.
technical issues, and there's like 84, I think, attachments now to the.
Okay.
plan. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Without some of those being public comments beyond even, yours, right? So, yeah, they are gonna continue for a couple more meetings, but, they're essentially honing in, unless there's a extenuatory reason. They're honing in on, mid-December, close the process. And then it's around that time or shortly thereafter, issuing a written decision, obviously. But they're honing in on specifics related to the development plan, specifics for site improvements, driveway access and traffic control and stuff like that. But there hasn't been as much focus on, I think, given the context of 40B, discussions of, revisiting unit counts or, percentages of affordability, we've already discussed and that kind of stuff, so, yeah.
I did issue a staff report in ZBA and highlighted that your letter was in the packet, so hopefully they can look at it.
And I did have a question, on the demolition of the gym. I haven't been over there recently.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
very quiet.
Sorry, yeah, so hazmat remediation is basically wrapped up. We're just confirming a few more things before they can bring the building down. Part of it has to do with just, we want to make sure we have a good idea of as they're sort of phasing it with, being a little careful because of the proximity of butters and proximity to the original school building we're protecting. So we need a little bit more detail on that. We've also just trying to make sure there's some pest control measures have been done before the building demo. So other than, sort of utility shut offs and making sure the building runs off, we're very close to that, but we're in, a matter of weeks. Week or two to sort of start off with that, but we'll get some new information up there for the schedule for folks on our website, and I'll be communicating with some of the direct butters in particular in the coming days, but we're getting close. So you'll see something physically on the outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and we continue to hear, as we communicate with Zeta about, their progress in financing and all that kind of stuff too. So they've done a fair amount of work on the design side of it. They're anxious to see the backside of the building, of course, because that allows them to finish up some of the work that they have to do, where we could see some of the detail there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have some minutes to approve.
Those will need to be continued to your following meeting, your next meeting.
Okay. Next meeting date.
Do we have to vote on the continuance for the minutes or?
I don't think so, I'm just gonna shift them to the
Okay.
the following meeting.
Next meeting.
Before Thanksgiving or after?
There was a date we needed to meet before.
Yeah.
Before the December 12th.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
okay, so we're.
So want to meet several weeks before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking at Caitlin. She's
Before
usually-
Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving.
I'm thinking, do you guys want to meet,
Nineteen?
Thanksgiving Day? Sure, gets me on that,
I'll bring the cranberry sauce.
yeah. Usually meet Wednesdays? Or does it-
Yeah, the 19th is a Wednesday.
Yeah, so,
Thanksgiving's not till the 27th. It's like the last.
yeah, but we wouldn't want to meet the day before.
No, the 19th is not, yeah.
That's a planning board meeting. so-
Okay.
I would really prefer not to meet on a Wednesday, because I always have to go into Boston on Wednesday.
Oh.
I can't do it. It's just tight,
No, well,
dashing here from the.
Would the 20th work?
yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll have to make sure we have a room, but,
Thursday, the 20th of November.
Yeah.
Just FYI, I not proceed along, it probably makes sense to, I'll probably be at a boardwalk meeting, that night, that Jody is, I just have a hold on that, so.
okay.
Just FYI, I might not be available that night.
What time is that at?
I have 6 in there, but I'm not sure if that's the official time he's starting, I just have a hold there myself, so.
And I think that's the budget and finance meeting for the tax vote.
Otherwise, December 4th looks wide open on the city calendar.
By the way, I didn't mention that, just suggest you shouldn't have your meeting that night, just that I wouldn't be available potentially that night. That's
you're
fine.
important though.
Yeah, you're very important. Come on.
December 4th.
December 4th?
Probably
Is that
fine
good?
for me,
Okay.
yeah.
I can't make it, but.
No.
What?
Um, Well.
But I don't need to be there if
I'm okay with
everyone else
either of
can.
those days, so I'm gonna.
Okay, maybe we'll hold those 2 days and I'll look for a room and meeting space, which can be
Yeah.
hard to come by. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That sounds good. Okay.
It's,
So moved.
okay. That's something like 8:15, I think.
82.
8:18.
Adjourned. Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for running a good meeting.
And hopefully that didn't come as a surprise to you, okay? What? Your nomination.
No, I was